Welcome to Midweek Mysteries, and thank you for being here. I am your host, Nick Ryan. I'd like to start the show by saying thank you to our listeners, and of course, our patrons. All of your support makes the podcast possible. As always, we enjoy giving a personal shout-out to our newest Patreon supporters at the beginning of our full-length episodes, which air every Sunday. So if you're a new patron, be sure to tune in. Today's first midweek mystery comes to us from Emily. Emily's story is called Father's Ghost is a Trickster. Emily says, I've been to a few funerals in my life, but none with someone so close to me as my father. I don't know if it's just me, but there's a unique feeling to everyone in my life, and my father's was strong. His death from health issues was no surprise. We survived with stubbornness and humor, but knowing did not lessen the emotional blow of it. His last spoken words were in the hospital when they asked what kind of drugs he wanted to alleviate the pain. He asked if he would become addicted. When I first saw him in his coffin, I saw just an empty shell, where there was nothing to him, and his unique feeling was nowhere within his body. It reinforced my belief that souls exist, and his was free. It gave me a feeling of relief and a sense of contentment. His funeral was the day before Christmas Eve, and on the night of Christmas, when everyone was in their own room and the day had died down, I suddenly felt him, his unique feeling. It was strong, and it made me smile, and I told him that I loved him. Since then, he plays tricks on us. For my brother, he misplaces tools that my brother just had. For me, he's played with my son's electronic toys. Nothing scares the crap out of you more than being in an empty room in an empty house, and all of a sudden, the RC cars run across the floor. The most memorable is my last birthday. We had gone to spend time at the local pool and soaked in the hot tub. I was exhausted, so I went to bed early. When I sleep that deep, I don't move. I wake up here and there just to adjust positions, and at some point, I felt my feet were bare. I went to bed with socks and woke up without them. These socks are not easily pulled off. I later found them in the bed, like they were removed carefully. The fold over my ankles still in place. Everyone laughed. It was funny. I love you, Dad. Don't stop being you. Our next midweek mystery comes from Santiago. Santiago's story is called The Worst Time to Hear La Llorona. Santiago says, Hello, Nick. I hope you're doing good. I've been listening to your podcast for about 2 months now, and I've been so hooked to it ever since I heard the story about La Llorona. It reminded me of a little story that happened to my brother about 15 years ago. Turns out me and my brother were about 10 and 8 years respectively. We happened to be playing on a swing at my grandma's house. Since the swing was made out of wood and board and an old piece of rope, it broke while my brother was swinging. My brother ended up landing on his elbow on a rock and broke it. My parents rushed him to the hospital, where he had to get surgery and some screws to help with the healing. After 2 days at the hospital, he came home. It was around late spring when everything happened, and so the first rains of the season came down as usual. The first night my brother came home, I remember going to sleep during a heavy rain. We used to share a room together, and I remember being overprotective with him before going to bed. So the morning came, and as expected, the ground was soaking wet, since it had rained all night. I got out of bed, and I remember the look that my brother had on his face. It wasn't a look of pain or frustration. I asked him what was wrong, but he wouldn't say anything to me. Later that day, my mom asked me if I had heard anything weird during the night, to which I answered, No, I didn't hear anything. I went to sleep and didn't hear anything or wake up to something. Then she said, Well, it rained all night long, and your brother was up all night. At the beginning, I thought it was normal for him to be up all night since he had just come home from having surgery, and I know fractures are painful and frustrating, and I thought maybe he was in so much pain that he couldn't sleep. Until my mom said that my brother told her that he heard what we call La Llorona. That moment I froze, and I remember I went straight to my room and asked my brother, So is it true? You heard La Llorona last night? His answer was yes, I'm pretty sure I did. It was such a scary lament. I cannot explain exactly what it sounded like, but it was like a dog howling and a person crying. I remember hearing it just as if it was outside our house in the street, and as the time passed, the lament was getting quieter, as if it was going away. I wanted to cry, but I was so scared that she would hear me and take me with her. After that night, we never had any similar experiences ourselves, but my cousin who lived at my grandma's house, which was next to the creek, had many stories to tell us about La Llorona every time we had a heavy rain. For some reason, she liked to be heard when it rained, but not on regular nights. Thanks for taking the time to read my story, and I hope all your listeners are able to listen to it. Best wishes, Santiago. Our next midweek mystery comes from Stefan. Stefan's story is called Nightly Visitor. Stefan says, "Hi, I like to tell my story from when I was little. I'm not sure how old I was, maybe 10. I was sleeping and woke up in the middle of the night, and above my bed was a tiny man hovering in the air. By tiny, I mean child size, but he was a grown man, just small, and he was just staring at me. The strangest part was that he was green and translucent, and he was sitting there cross-legged. He had old-style clothing on, a vest, and a bowler hat. I rubbed my eyes to see if he would disappear, thinking I was fully awake. However, he did not. He just kept his gaze on me. I wasn't afraid. After all, my brother was sleeping in the same room, and my mom and dad were in the next room over. I just pulled my cover over my head and went back to sleep. I can still see him clearly in my mind, and this has been with me my entire life. I am now in my 30s, and I've never seen anything like that ever again. There had never been a house in that spot before, but he clearly had the look of someone from the late 1800s, with the profession of a tailor maybe. Thank you for listening." Our last midweek mystery for today comes from David. David's story is called The Changing Dog. David says, "Hi Nick. I'm 22 years old now, and I've never told this story to anyone, and have never heard of a story like it on your podcast. When I was a little kid, around maybe 4 to 7 years old, I and my family lived way out in the country. Our nearest neighbor was about 2 miles away, so we didn't have a lot of noise around the house. Me and my little brother shared a room on the front side of the house, and we had 3 windows side by side that showed the whole front driveway, which was a large flat field where grass didn't grow. On the other side of the field sat a single wooden pole about 15 feet high with a light on top, so at night it would light up a small circle. About 1 to 2 times a week in the middle of the night, I would randomly wake up at random times, and every time I would get an intense feeling telling me to get out of my bed and look through my window to the lit-up circle of grass which the light pole lit up. Every time that I would get this intense feeling and look outside the window into the pitch-black night, I would see a dog, all black, just sitting under the light in the middle of the lit-up circle of grass. Every time I would see this dog, or canine, I would call it, because it wasn't just a dog, it would physically change its appearance. Some night it was a black dog, and some nights a black wolf or a black fox, which is strange to see in Texas, due to the state not having black wolves or foxes. It would never move or bark or howl. It would just sit there and stare right in my eyes, like it was able to see my soul. And even to this day, over a decade later, I remember it clearly, and I still don't know why this would happen or what it wanted. I have other strange stories if you would be interested in reading. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. As we come to the end of this edition of Midweek Mysteries, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for tuning in and supporting the podcast, and a special thank you to Emily, Santiago, Stefan, and David for writing in and sharing their experience with all of us. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Sunday for our next episode. If you or someone that you know has witnessed something unexplainable and you'd like to have your story shared on the podcast, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or visit paranormalmysteriespodcast.com and click on the Tell Your Story link. Please remember, no matter how insignificant or outlandish you believe your experience may seem, I'd like to hear about it. You can also connect with us by joining our forum and by following us on social media. All of our contact information can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. If you're interested in taking the next step and becoming a patron, you can visit patreon.com/paranormal mysteries. Benefits include ad-free episodes and early access to select shows. New episodes of the Paranormal Mysteries Podcast are produced every Sunday, with the new Midweek Mysteries airing every Wednesday, and they're available on all of your favorite podcast apps. From all of us at the Paranormal Mysteries Podcast, thank you for listening, and remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.